Hello, my name's Colin Campbell. I'm with Polygon. Last week I went down to see Nintendo and I got to play with the SNES Classic, and I had a look at the home screen, some of the new features they've got, and I had a play with Star Fox 2. Let's take a look. So as you can see, in terms of structure, the home screen is not that different from the NES Classic. And you saw there that there are three display modes. There's the 4x3 720p, there is the Pixel Perfect, which means that the developers have sort of de-elongated the pixels as you see them, and there's a CRT mode if you want to get that authentic feeling. So here we are, just flipping through some of the games, and you can see here that you have a frame around Super Mario Kart. You see that sort of grid, and you can choose different kinds of frames to go around each individual game that you're playing. There is one that is like wood paneling, there is one that is like old style speakers. You've got these different colors of grids, and some of these will change color as you're playing. So for example, as you get to the end of the race, or if you're winning a fight or whatever, they will sort of flash and show you different colors. I think perhaps the most useful addition is the new save system. As in the NES Classic, you've got those 4 saves, but it will also cache between a minute and 3 minutes worth of your previous gameplay, so that you can go back to the place that's most advantageous. So for example, if you're having a fight in Street Fighter 2 and it's not going very well, just save, go back to the point where you felt you were doing great, and pick up from there. The footage that you save will also be used as your sort of screensaver, you know, that sort of demo mode. You can use Nintendo's own demo mode if you're bashful, but it's nice to have your own gameplay that's sort of playing there in that mode. So now we're going to start looking at Star Fox 2. A lot of this footage has been around for a long time, but this is the first time we've seen it actually on the Super Nintendo Classic, and I'll let you enjoy this opening sequence, and then we'll talk some more about what's going on with the Super Nintendo Classic. So it's less linear than the original Star Fox in that you can kind of choose your battles and you can zip around the universe fighting the enemy. You can also choose your wingman, who will help you out. It sort of acts as a second life if you get yourself into trouble. And you know, playing the game, it's an interesting look at how video games were in the mid 1990s. You know, as you may know, this game was completely finished and was ready to be released in the mid 90s, but Nintendo decided to hold off because of the impending release of the Nintendo 64, and at that time 3D was where it was all at, and Nintendo didn't want its effort to look poor in comparison to the new consoles coming out at the time. So it was a reasonable decision. The game has been sort of available as a ROM for some time, but this is the first time it's been officially released. The other thing I wanted to say about this game is that a new manual has been created for it, which you'll be able to click on and look at, and I guess it's going to be in the style of the manuals in the mid 1990s or early 1990s. The other games all will have their own manuals, which are being scanned directly in from the originals. And so here's the gameplay. It's a 3D space shooter, as you probably know, and for the time it was an extremely impressive piece of technology. It was based on the Super FX chip, which Nintendo included in their cartridges, and which gave a kind of 3D boost and a 2D boost to the games that were released at the time. They were more expensive games, and that technology was obviously superseded when the Nintendo 64 came along, but for the time this was a pretty impressive video game. And I think it's fair to say that it's not a particularly easy game to play, but then again, games in those days weren't as easy or as forgiving as they so often are today. Thus, the usefulness of those save slots, which, by the way, also the natural save points in the games have been retained. And you can see there that it's possible to switch from third person to first person view. This game also, by the way, is a two-player split-screen game. If you want, there are a couple of competitive split-screen games included in the 21 games that will be with the Super Nintendo Classic. And I think the addition of a second controller is a very smart move. I mean, it adds in $20 to the price, but I think it's worth it. I mean, especially when you look at the package of all the games that are being included here. I think this was a very special time in terms of the development of video games. I think it's fair to say that the Super Nintendo was the best console around at the time. I mean, I was a Sega Mega Drive owner, or Genesis as it is in the States. But looking back, I think it's plain that the games that you're seeing here are the best, some of the best games that were released at the time. And I'm interested. Obviously, I'm going to go out and get one of these if I can get it when it comes out. And I'm interested in kind of rediscovering what was so magical about these games. And it's not a matter of nostalgia. I just think that they are, in and of themselves, impressive pieces of entertainment. And you can see here, as in Star Fox Zero for the Wii U, the R-Wing can go inside these installations and kind of its wings become legs. And so you're sort of in this first-person corridor shooter type scenario. So my time with Nintendo last week wasn't that long. I didn't have time to dig into all the games that are obviously there. It's the original code. We're all familiar with those games. The Super Nintendo Classic, the SNES Classic if you prefer, is coming out on September 29th in North America and Europe. It's going to be priced in the US at $79.99. I'm told that it will be easier to get hold of than the NES Classic was. They're building more units, which I think is very wise. Stay with Polygon for coverage of the SNES Classic, as well as our review when it comes out.